This is a continuation of my reading plan for the essay, The Sense Reality Bullying on Political Judgment, Political Ethics, and Leadership, by Joshua L. Cherniss. I don't have the time to really take notes, and I did take some notes on the margins, but I think the better way is to record it and read on. So don't have time to really dig into such kind of reading anymore. So anyway, let me read on as the interest won't finish the study. One of the thinkers are the bullying, the major thinkers of liberalism in the last century. And anyway, let's move on with the second part. The title is The Visionary and the Virtuoso Political Leaders and the Leadership. Bullying often framed his portraits of political leaders as depictions of political greatness. To be great, on Bullying's account, is to take a large step, one far beyond the normal capacities of men, in satisfying or materially affecting central human interests. Great individuals permanently and radically alter the outlook and values of a significant body of human beings in ways that previously seemed impossible and at least improbable. This is not to say that great political leaders act alone or can control the consequences of their actions. They are dependent on the action of others and captive to the vagaries of events and unintended consequences. But the imprint of personal impression on the world, leaving it different from what it was, and from how it would have been in their absence. Bullying begins his analysis in characteristic fashion by noting that there were at least two types of political greatness. Those closely resemble his famous distinction between single-minded hedgehogs and multifocal foxes, hedgehog-like politicians, whom we may term political visionaries, are possessed by a bright, coherent dream, free of doubts or hesitations. They often fail to understand people, events, and succeed when they succeed through concentration of willpower, directness of strength, inspiring, hectoring, manipulating, or coercing others to fit into the pattern, as they see in their mind's eyes, dominating history by ignoring its complexities. Such leaders may rise to noble grandeur. They may also be monsters. Even when they are benevolent, there is something inhuman about such vehement, fanatical crusaders who, armed with a doctrine in place of humanity and realism, are morally proof against human considerations, are emotionally remote from the sufferings of human beings upon whom they inevitably trample. Absorbed in the visions and determined to translate them into reality, such politicians know not what they do and do not care either. It is this, indeed, that sometimes allows them to overcome enormous odds. Their convictions, focus, determination can free them from doubts and hesitations that afflict others, making them exceptionally dangerous effective. By virtue of the word resistant to reality, they sometimes are able to transform the world to the unforeseen degree. The second type of great politician, the political virtuoso, is particularly gifted with a capacity for political judgment. Such politicians possess an with the greatest possible delicacy, which gave them a sense of what to do and when to do it in order to achieve their ends which reflect what the large numbers of their fellow citizens are thinking and feeling, often dimly and inarticulately. Leaders of the second type have a keen sense of precisely where the shoe pinches, where light press on them most heavily, and convey a sense of understanding their inner needs, of responding to their own deepest impulses. They accordingly inspire not awe, but a confidence and affection. Berlin clearly was drawn to leaders this is the second time, many of the example he typically used to illustrate Lincoln, Masharik, Roosevelt, and Wiseman were figures he regarded as morally good as well as politically great. Berlin's distinction between visionary and virtuoso leaders, like that between hedgehogs and foxes, or positive and negative liberty, may seem to be obviously primorous, tendentiously normative, or to present itself as an analytical distinction appear to really be an oblique strategy for anarchy. Yet with his other more famous dichotomies, Berlin's invaluable stance towards the two types of leader he describes is more complex and nuanced than it first appears. The characterization of the visionary politician is quoted carries with it, to be sure, implicit or explicit moral censor. But Berlin qualified his criticism, acknowledging that the visionary politicians could be not only successful, but admirable. Indeed, when turned to the first of Berlin's portraits of individual leaders, one found him praising a statesman explicitly identified with his visionary type, Winston Churchill. Churchill's strength lay in the impregnability of his bright, heroic vision. Blind to half-tuned, resistant to change, he does not mirror. He affects others and alters them to his own powerful measure. Through the sheer intensity of his eloquence and the force of personality, Churchill bound a spell upon his fellow citizens, who went forward into battle transformed by his words. It created a new mode around him, rather than accurately perceiving the one that was there. It was this that allowed him to rally his beleaguered nation when the most in needed rallying. The second great exemplar of political leadership to whom Berlin devoted extensive discussion, Churchill's friend ally Franklin Roosevelt, was a politician of a very different quality, not a visionary, but a pragmatist, and not an aristocrat, but a democrat. Indeed, the most genuine and unswerving spokesman for democracy of his time. Roosevelt was demotic virtuosity, the capacity to understand, identify with, and respond to the aspirations, needs, and ideas of a humble people in ways that made them feel understood, respected, and protected. His capacity to inspire rests not merely on charisma, but on the trust and confidence that he evoked in his followers, which rested on the perception that he understood the ideals, the needs of the people, and their best interests at the heart. And even if Roosevelt did play on his constituents' sentiments, he did not, with some notable exceptions, on which Boleyn remained silent, to seek to dragon or tyrannize them. He had the skills of a demagogue, but it issued base demagoguery, and so was able to protect American democracy against demagogic temptations. And his sharp awareness of fellow citizens' needs, hopes, virtues, and limitations kept his politics grounded. By virtue of his perceptual gifts, and naturally, a brilliant, optimistic Roosevelt was able to avoid the folly of arrogant, the fury of disappointed utopianism. It appears that allowed Roosevelt to free his followers from fear, despair, reflected a lack of the depth, the sense of the tragic that the Churchill possessed. Magnificent, virtuoso though he was, Roosevelt was averse to probing beneath the surface. He recognized similarities, but was impervious to differences. He saw possibilities, but was sometimes blind to dangers. Churchill was more serious, more intent, but more keenly the external differences between people. They would make a new cosmopolitan order difficult to attain. This allowed him to strike chords that lay beyond Roosevelt's grasp. Roosevelt might have spoken of a sweat and blood, but when Churchill offered his people tears, he spoke a word which might have been uttered by Lincoln, or Mazzini, or Cromwell, but not by Roosevelt. On the other hand, Churchill was frightening his imperviousness to aspect of reality that contradicted his vision. There was in him something of the fanatical vision and blindness and stubborn self-absorption that Boleyn noticed in Woodrow Wilson, another political visionary. If Roosevelt lacked depth, he possessed a political virtuoso sensitivity to reality, developed to the point of genius. He was able to sense the tendencies of his time and the projections into the future to a most uncommon, uncanny degree. The inner currents, the tremors, and complicated convolutions of his time seemed to register themselves within his nervous system with a kind of seismographical accuracy. Read in conjunction with his essays on political judgment, his portraits of Churchill and Roosevelt revealed that Boleyn held both political hedgehogs and foxes to have both merits and weaknesses. These portraits usefully undermine the stark distinction that Boleyn drew between virtuoso and visionary leaders in his more abstract discussions. Churchill's and Roosevelt's success were due to the fact that the former was not completely blind to the real needs and aspirations of his countrymen, while the latter was able to look beyond immediate exigencies to more arduous hopes. At the same time, those portraits also undermine the necessary imperfection for all political leaders, but not in a disparaging or a demeaning way, which denigrates the subject and undermines any sense of politics as potential noble activity. Boleyn sought to highlight the real gifts and achievements of Churchill and Roosevelt, and in so doing, vindicates the reality, possibility, and importance of political heroism. But by acknowledging crucial limitations of both men, by using each as a foil to highlight the virtues and weaknesses of the other, he says not only that no politicians are perfect, and that success depends in large part on the fortuitous fate between a leader's personal qualities and the circumstances, but also that the very virtues which make a given politician capable of doing great things are inseparably from limitations, faults, even vices. Berlin's essays read in conjunction with the illustrate what Edward Shales calls complexity of virtue. Berlin thus points to a more realistic appreciation of political leadership against both overcritical cynicism and uncritical hero worship, the former of which often reflects a simplistic reaction against the simplicity of the latter. Symbolistic reaction against the simplicity of the latter. The statesman whom Berlin knew most intimately and about whom he wrote more extensively was Chen Weizmann. Where Churchill and Roosevelt preserved the political communities in the face of a trial of disaster, Weizmann brought a new community into being. In doing so, he showed how visionary and pragmatic dispositions might be blended, and political efficacy and a moral integrity balanced. Weizmann was certainly a statesman of the virtuoso type, on good terms with reality. He was above all things an empiricist, free from fanaticism, intolerant, utopian idealism. It combined realism with visionary power, reminiscent of Churchill. He held firm to that belief that a moral force, if competently organized, always defeated the mere material power. He remarked to Berlin, "Miracles do happen, but one has to work very hard for them." Acting as if he were a statesman with a powerful nation behind him, he was able to impel others to act as if this were true, until in fact it became true. Weizmann's apparently visionary tendencies proved to be in tune with reality. I can sense Berlin's relish when he writes that it turned out that the history conformed to Weizmann's vision, compounded of hard-headed common sense and deep historical emotion, and not to the normal categories of realists. Even more than the depictions of Roosevelt and Churchill, Berlin's tribute to Weizmann suggests how vision and virtuosity might be brought together with they enrich both. That's the second part.